All right, here we are. Ministry Matters. I have the legendary Dragon Slayer, Scott Garcia, Pastor
the
Scott Garcia.
wounded dragon slayer right now.
Well, it's awesome to have you on the show. I actually did not know anything about Scott Garcia until I arrived to New Life Church. And they said, hey, this guy's name is Scott Garcia. He's a pastor over here. You should meet him. And I was like, I've heard that last name somewhere. Somewhere I have heard that last name. And I was like, man, who is this guy? And then I went to Pastor and I was like, where did he come from? And he goes, he came from Valley Bible Fellowship. His dad served there for years. And I go, I know who he is. And I actually met your brother years ago before I met you. And it just
he's a runner too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We used to run on, I think Tuesday nights we would go run with him.
He used to run cross country when he was in high school.
Really?
You know the movie McFarland USA that came out, that Disney movie that came out a few years ago about the McFarland team?
Yeah.
That's the same year. My brother used to run against them.
Oh man. It makes sense. Man, that guy was committed. It'd be 100 degrees outside and he would run with us. And he had no problem. I mean, he did 3 miles the first time he ran with us.
The most I did like 10 years ago when my son was a young teenager, we would play airsoft. And we would play airsoft in like July and August. It'd be like 106 outside. And we'd be full geared up playing airsoft and running around. And yeah, that was pretty crazy.
That is like,
it's been a long time.
In a sauna.
Yes.
But listen, if you're watching this show, I have a request for you. I would love for you guys to let me know which pastors in Bakersfield or wherever you would like to see on this show. I would love to talk ministry, help them promote their ministry. I know there's a lot of guys that you know and girls that their ministry is just in a box and it needs to come out.
Yeah.
This show is to help do that. We can put your ministry out there in a new way so that you can get new people helping you. With that being said, my favorite question is a check-in, and it is, what are you thankful for and what's hard?
What am I thankful for and what's hard? Well, I'm thankful that I hear the voice of God.
Ooh, yeah.
Like when I was thinking about it, what am I mostly thankful for? And everything that affects, what I do as a business, what I do as a ministry, and then also what's currently going on with me right now. I threw out my back last week and got a back brace on right now and everything like that. And it's been really, really like Sunday. I really had this like experience of God said, I couldn't even go to church. Like I was at home. I've been flat on my back for like 3 or 4 days now. And so I was just flat on my back, watching the stream. I was laying flat on the couch, watching the stream on my Apple TV on my projector. And God said, before the service is over, get up and go and have them pray for you.
Oh my God.
And like, I heard that. I had worship music on and I'm just been praying. I'm like, okay. And I just got in my car and drove to get to church. But when you had that question, that was what came to my mind when I was like that, because that affects even, the ministry that I'm doing with speaking and with the podcast and everything going on there, being a pastor and speaking at church and stuff like that. It's just hearing God is what I'm most thankful for, because I get so nervous before I speak. I get nervous that I'm going to be in the way. I know that I know that God said this is what to speak. I know that these are the points to hit, the stories to tell. I know when I'm getting ready, I know I heard God to do that, but I'm so nervous. I go, but what if I mess it up?
It's crazy. This pastor taught me this because I would get that same feeling like, God, I don't want to ever get in your way.
Yeah.
And he told me, he said, Adrian, remember that your body confuses excitement with nervousness. Well, I go, what do you mean? Because he goes, everybody gets the feeling, but only certain people translate it the right way. And he changed my whole world.
Yeah.
So now, because people would be like, are you nervous? And I'd be like, yeah, I guess I am. And now I'm like, no, I'm excited because really your body is trying to react to what God is about to do. But that is real, man.
Yeah. And I like that. And I like having that feeling. I like having that feeling because I'm like, I don't ever want to be showing up saying, I got this. Like, I don't ever want to show up to speak somewhere and think like, oh, I got this. This is all I want to be like, God, I can't do this without you. I cannot do this without you. You have to do this, all the way up to the moment of walking on the stage and be like, okay, God, you're doing this. You're doing this. You're doing this. Hey, everybody, how's it going? So if you've ever seen me speak or come up and maybe I look all natural, before I'm going up, I'm just like, God, you're doing, you got to do this. You got to. So I'm thankful that I hear the voice of God, that I get to hear that's a real thing. And people, a lot of times people don't, they think about Christianity, non-Christians see Christians, they think you hear God, you hear the voice, you're hearing voices in your head. So, and it's like, yeah, I'm thankful that I get to hear the voice of God.
Yeah, and you should be afraid if you don't hear the voice of God.
Yeah,
that's what I tell people. I was like, they go like, oh man, I want to hear God like you. And I go, bro, you should really want that, because it's a scary thing to not know what God wants you to do or what God is saying in a moment. But for me, I am most thankful for, I would say today, this morning, I woke up, I got to serve yesterday with Pastor James Ranger. And as I was sitting there, like this morning, I was realizing how cool it is to have a leader over me that is like okay with me being aggressive, being a lion, and like that I don't turn down, and he never asked me to be like, all right, I need you to tame it down. He just lets me go. And I love that, man. And this morning I was like just telling God, thank you that this is the season that I'm in right now, that I have a pastor over me like this, because every kind of pastor has a different purpose. Like if you're with a pastor who doesn't just let you go, God's building a character in you in that season. But when you have one that just lets you go, then God's like, okay, you've developed the character, so I can trust you with this. So that is what I'm most thankful. What's hard is right before this show, I'm not kidding you, they towed my vehicle. My son had to go and pick me up.
You barely made it here.
I barely made it. But you know what? I was not going to miss. I purposely was fishing within a mile of here. And I was like, worst case scenario, I'm going to run to the show and then jump right on all sweaty. But thank God for my son, Isaiah. He came and picked me up and brought me to the show. So I'm very thankful for that too.
Kids who can drive. It's really nice, isn't it?
It's a huge blessing, man. Poor guy doesn't even know how many errands he's going to have to do.
Right. So what's hard for me, I didn't have a chance to, what's hard for me, and this is just being raw for me personally in general, honestly, what's hard for me is discipline. It's funny because I usually, if my yes is yes, my no is no. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And everything, but for as long as somebody's expecting something, if there's a deadline, if there's an expectation, if there's an outside motivation that says, Scott, somebody's expecting this from you, got to do it, I'm on it. But if there's not an outside motivation, if nobody's checking on me, if no, like personal discipline, I'll let my blood sugar get out of control. I may not eat right. I mean, like personal discipline, I struggle with personal discipline. That's why I reached out actually with a guy named Sal at the church. I reached out to you, reached out to a guy named Sal, just say, hey, I want to do this better, but I just need somebody checking up on me. I just need somebody asking me, hey, how did you eat this week? Hey,
and you're talking about physical discipline, like, not spiritual.
Not spiritual discipline, but in general discipline. Like if I got to do something around the house, but there is no deadline for it, I'm like, I'll do it later.
No comment.
That kind of thing. I just saw a funny video on a little reel on Instagram. It's called the almost done construction or something like that. Two more days construction, and it's like, why, you get it almost done, but why finish when you can put it off until later? It's like that's kind of like, just couple more days, like, 98% done.
I hope my wife doesn't jump on here and start commenting about all the projects that I need to do. But
so I'm always real. I'm God's been telling me, hey, get some people around you, especially for the exercise and the stuff like that, because it's low on my priority, but as I'm about to hit 50 this year, it needs to get higher on my priority. As I'm sitting here with my back thrown out and a brace, sitting in pain, I'm like, I got to take better care of my body.
Yeah, that's good. And if you have friends around you, these two questions, I'm trying to put them out there so people start using them. Like, check in on your friends. Yeah. What are they thankful for and what's hard? And it doesn't have to be religious, but it really creates a bonding in your relationship with other people. My friend Brent Milton is the one who taught me this.
Oh, really?
And his wife, Bryn Milton, was the one who told us, like, what do you guys talk about when you bike ride? And my friend Brent's like, I don't know. She's like, you guys hang out for hours. You don't talk. And
right. Yeah,
No.
that's guys. That's
It's
guys. There's that video, or like or was it that joke? Like the wife is like, so you guys are golfing all day. What you talking about? Nothing.
Nothing. But it really did help us deepen our relationship, and we really did come closer together, like as friends, because of those conversations.
This is Brent, who owns Pac West.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Brent Melton. Yeah. And he's an awesome guy.
He's an awesome guy, fellow adult fan of Lego.
Yeah. Another friend. Oh yeah, he loves the Lego thing. He has a whole dynamic tower at his house that's built in, that he films and everything. His daughters put it together. It's pretty crazy.
I built him a Lego set of their stage, of the Pac West stage, and their sound system and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, there's pictures of it somewhere. They used it for the Christmas card or something like that one year, but I built that for.
That's awesome. What a small world. All right. Well, hey, I want to give Covenant Coffee a huge shout out and thank you for your support. If you guys, they don't just serve hot drinks. So if you're looking for cold drinks, they have 2 locations. You can find them in Bakersfield on Google Maps. They have one in Northchester, and then they have one off of
right across the street here.
Right across the street off of Mohawk, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So go check them out. Thank you
Mohawk
guys
in
for
California.
Continued support. And
man.
I want to tell a story though. Because now that we're thinking about your back, I've got this crazy God story.
All right.
I think the audience will love this, because when you go and pray for somebody who has an injured back, you automatically think God wants to heal their back, right? This story will...
I'll tell you, I would like my back healed.
Yeah, this story will rock your idea of what God will do when you're injured. So I go to pray for this guy. At the time, I was serving with Pastor Hector at BBF.
Okay,
prayer team.
Hector Rizzo.
Yeah, Hector Rizzo, hospital ministry.
If you guys watch Mentality Unleashed, that's his son, Jonathan.
Jonathan Rizzo, yes. And so he sends me to pray for this guy. He's had an injured back for like months. He's been in his bed. And we go and we're like,
it's not months.
No, it's not going to be you, Scott. You'll see in this story. Okay, so I go to pray for him. And as soon as I walk in, everybody's like, oh, poor, how long has it been? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm just sitting there trying to hear from God. And God goes, tell him I don't care about his back. And I'm like, nope, I'm out, Lord. I am not going to tell him that.
I like this story so far.
I'm 100% not saying it. And then God repeats himself. Tell him I don't care about his back. And the ladies are pouring it on like, oh, you should see this doctor, that doctor, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, all right, God, you want me to tell this guy that? Get them out of the room so I can tell him.
Yep.
And their phones go off immediately. Ringing phones, and they all leave the room, and it's just me and him. And I haven't said a word. And I look at him, and I'm like, okay, God, don't get me shot. Here we go. And I go, God wants you to know he doesn't care about your back. And he just leans back. And I guess the ladies heard me because they rush in and they're like, oh, and they just acted like I didn't say it.
Yeah.
And God said, say it again. And I'm like, oh, not in front of him, God. Please don't make me say it in front of him. And he says, and then God added to it. He said, tell him I care about his heart. And I go, God wants you to know he does not care about your back. He cares about your heart. And the ladies got quiet when I said it that time. And I remember he just started to weep. And I said, what has God been dealing with in your heart?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I've been having an affair for 18 years and I haven't told my wife.
Whoa.
And I was like, yeah, buddy, God definitely does not care about your back. And I was like, but man, that moment, because we all think like when we're injured, oh, God automatically wants to fix what's broken.
Yeah.
But sometimes what's really broken is on the inside. I'm not saying that to you, Scott, but it reminded me of that story.
It's interesting because I have a healing story in the past with Pastor Ron Vietti. Because I believe that God heals. I believe in miracles. Yeah. Where I slip off for most people is I don't believe God heals every time. It's not possible. All of us will die someday.
Right.
All of us, there's going to be one day there's going to be an illness that God is not going to heal us from, because that's what we're going to die from. I mean, to me, it seems obvious God doesn't heal every time, because otherwise everybody'd be alive forever. So I've always said, God, I know you can heal if you want to, but I'm not going to pray for healing every single time unless I hear God say, pray for healing. I'm going to, hey kid, pray for this. And I'm like, I'm going to pray that, God's with them, that, they see what they need to learn from this. God, we're going to I'll ask, like if it's your will, God, for this person to be healed, then but I'm not just going to go out. I declare healing unless I hear God say, pray this over pray healing. And there's been times where it's like, okay, God told me to pray healing over you. I'm going to pray healing over you. So it's again, those moments, like I was going back, I know I heard God. I'm like, okay, so now I know God, it wasn't my brain that came up with this. God said, pray for healing this time. Yeah. And so I just been kind of dealing with this and like going through, but like, it was Sunday where God said, go and get prayer and ask for healing. Like, okay, I'm going to go and do that. But my healing story with Pastor Ron, this is what changed really my view. Cause I was kind of like, I know God can heal, but it's not all the time. I know he can. And I had this, it was back in 2006, something like that. I was working by myself. I was working on a Saturday by myself in my office up at VBF, getting videos ready for the church and stuff like that. And all day I'd had this pain in my hip, on the front of my hip. And I didn't know if it was a hernia, if it was appendix. I don't know what it was. Finally, it's at one point, it's like 9:00 at night. I'm getting stuff ready for the church the next day, and I'm in so much pain. I literally just lay on the floor of my office. And as I'm laying on the floor, I hear a door downstairs open and close because my office is literally right above Pastor Ron's office. And I hear somebody coming up the stairs, and he opens up the door. It's like 9:00 at night on a Saturday. And I'm laying on the floor. He's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "No, I'm really in pain." He's like, "I was driving by the church on my way home, and God said to come into the parking lot and come see you." And I'm like, okay, I said, I got pain. It's been all day. And he's like, okay. And he just put his hand right here and just started praying. And I felt this heat as though he had put a hot pad.
Yeah.
Just this heat radiating from that spot. He prayed. And I'm like, and the pain was gone and my body was hot. He's like, "Are you good?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay." And he left. Like I had worked there for 16 years. He had never shown up on a Saturday. Like that was the only, he just happened to be driving by and God said, "Pull in there. Scott needs you."
Yeah.
And he prayed for me and the pain went away. And it was like, I'm like,
that's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah. That's awesome. That guy that God told me he didn't care about his back. Yeah. I didn't pray for healing. God told me not to pray for that. But that is crazy.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
So there's different things, different times. But yeah, that was for me. It was because I'm just not going to, I'm kind of, and call, maybe I'm off. I understand that, maybe I'm not understanding that, right? Because people say, God will heal every time. Like, I think God's got to tell you to pray for healing. I think you got to listen. I think every time somebody comes up and asks for a prayer request, can you pray for this? In my brain, I'm like, God, what do you want me to pray for?
Yeah. Yeah. I always pause.
Yeah. I'm not going to just, let me pray for God. I'm saying, God, what do the prayer of faith, but it's not just faith in what I'm saying. It's got to be faith in what God's told me to pray.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I got to hear God. God says, pray for this. Okay. I have faith now to pray for that because I know God told me to pray for that.
Yeah. And I think sometimes too, like when we are broken, we really want God to fix that thing that we feel is most broken in us.
Yeah.
So I hear the people too on this because people have come up many times and they ask for a certain thing to pray and I'll be quiet and I'll hear God. And then I pray for something different and they'll just look at me and go, how did you know that?
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't know anything. I was just listening to the boss, you know?
Well, you say, listen to the boss. Yeah, we're listening to God, but also God has his anointed. So a few weeks ago we had on a first Wednesday, we had a night and I was speaking that night, first Wednesday, a couple of weeks ago, right before 4th of July. And Pastor James said, hey, we're going to do a special time of healing prayer. So make room for a special time of healing prayer. And under those circumstances, when I knew we was going to do this, I'm like, God, that is our lead pastor. That is the anointed pastor of this church. If he's giving us instructions to have healing prayer, then I believe that I'm supposed to pray for healing for everybody that comes by because that's following in alignment with what what your anointed has said. So in that circumstance, everybody's coming up. All right, I'm praying a prayer of faith that you're going to be healed because this is the direction that that God's anointed has given us right now as a church for this day, for this moment.
Yeah. And I think how long have you been a pastor in Kern County and Bakersfield?
26 years. In one way or another, I started off as a youth pastor. Right before I got married, my wife and I were getting married. I got hired as a youth pastor at Valley Bible. So we've been married 26 years. So right around 26, 27 years.
Wow. That's awesome, man. And in those years, like you get to see the differences. I know myself, like in the beginning, when I used to pray for people, they would come right up to me and whatever they asked, that's what I prayed for. And I would attach Bible to it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how I was trained. And then I read this book called Pearls of Wisdom or Pearls of Prayer by Miles Monroe. And he talks about the power of prayer. But there was this one chapter and it was all about you better not pray against God's will.
Yeah.
And it struck me like, and from that moment on, I learned to like pause and just wait.
Yeah.
Just wait for 1 second and see if God has a different plan.
Well, I remember as a kid, again, grew up at Valley Bible Fellowship under Pastor Ron Vietti, hearing all of his amazing God stories and stuff like that, and knowing what God can do. But we would have testimony nights back when I was a teenager. So this is like back late 80s, early 90s, to where every once in a while they'll do testimonies on Wednesday nights, and people would line up. And Pastor Ron, he used to hand them the mic. After a few years, he held onto the mic and put it in front of them.
Pastor James just taught me that.
you don't hand them.
Don't give them the mic, Adrian.
But they would do testimony nights. And I remember as a teenager, we talked about the spiritual gifts. I didn't know what it was until years later when, they say, hey, find out what your spiritual gift is. Take a spiritual gifts test, answer these questions, find out what your spiritual gifts test. I didn't know what discernment was. I just remember being a kid and watching people come up and start talking and sharing their story. And I remember being a teenager going, wow, yeah, well, okay, they're done. Okay, God, that's not God anymore. Like I'd be like, okay, all right, take the mic away. I remember being uncomfortable in my seat, thinking that person is now going beyond what God said. Like I could just hear. I remember being a teenager and I didn't know what it was. I just knew, and I found out later, it's the gift of discernment. And just I just have that feeling of like this is what God is saying. This is not what God is saying. And so when I'm praying with people, that's always
X-Men. So it's part of the X-Men too. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
It's a good explanation because when you are walking in the Spirit and you have discernment, it does give you that ability to know when God's like in something or he's not in something, and it makes it easy to step out of it because you're like, God's not in that. I'm out. So that's really cool. So you got to be a youth pastor. You got to help with Pastor Ron. So let's talk about your dad a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I think sometimes guys like your dad are like the Apostle Peter in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
Peter in the Bible, people are like, they'll take the verse out of context that he's the rock and all that, right? Yeah. But the one thing they forget is that Peter, although John claims to be the closest friend of Jesus, Peter was the only guy that Jesus spends one-on-one time at the beach when he had a barbecue. He pulls him aside, and that showed me how close he was to Jesus.
Yeah.
And like when he betrayed him and said, I don't know him, I'm not with them. That's why it impacted their relationship so much.
Yeah.
But also Peter's like hidden. It's almost like the disciples didn't like him, but it's not that they didn't like him. It's like sometimes those guys that do the big work for God are forgotten really fast.
Yeah. But also you got to remember Peter in that moment when he denied Jesus, he was there.
Yes, he was.
None of the other ones were there.
That's right.
He went to where Jesus was. None of the other ones were there, but he was there.
Yeah.
So there, give him some credit on that.
Yeah. Like he was the close guy. He was the only guy to take the sword out to defend Jesus, right? None of the
he
other
said, "Call me out on the water."
Yeah. So that like his relationship with Jesus was super strong, but most people don't think of him that way.
Yeah.
And like when I arrived to VBF and I was there for a couple of years, I heard your dad's name all the time. And I was like, who is this guy?
Now, for those you may not, you started going to VBF when? What year?
2017.
2017. My dad passed away in 2005.
2005.
And those stories continue.
Yeah. So tell the audience, they don't know who your dad is.
So my dad, his name was Charlie Garcia. He, by occupation, he was a high school teacher. He taught the graphic arts class at the ROC for the Kern County Regional Occupational Program. And he taught that for many years. He taught photography at Foothill High School for several years, but he was also an elder at Valley Bible from when we started in 1983. I think we started attending Valley Bible. It was Outreach for Christ at the time, and then they changed it to Valley Bible in like 88 or something like that. And he was an elder there, and he had the gift of prophecy. And what I mean by that, it was not a this, ooh, God's saying this and go, what the gift of prophecy really was, when you look at all the prophets in the Old Testament, my dad was a prophet in that God would speak to him and he would just do. Think about what the prophets did. Prophets in the Old Testament, not everybody could hear the Holy Spirit. That was something that was special about the prophets, that they heard the Holy Spirit, but also they just did it. How many times did God tell a prophet, go do this, and it doesn't make sense, but they just did it?
Yeah.
And that was the simplicity of my dad. And he described it one time. In fact, I made a documentary, about a 30-minute documentary of my dad. My wife has been telling me, you got to put it on. I'm going to put it on YouTube. You got to hold me accountable to this, because I'm going to forget. I'm going to put it on my YouTube channel.
That would be awesome.
It's called, I think it's called Making Hot Dogs. My dad would describe the gift of prophecy as, he's like, it's like I have a hot dog stand. I'm just out there on the street and I have a hot dog stand. And God will say, all right, time to make a hot dog. Pull out the bun, put the hot dog on there, and just put this ingredient, put this ingredient, put this ingredient. And a person would walk up, I like to order a hot dog, and hand it to him. And that's exactly what they were going to order. And they're like, how did you know? What has God told you about me? What? And he's like, I don't know anything. God just said, make this hot dog and give it to this person. He was just, and he didn't, my dad just didn't ask why. He never questioned God. He was in worship in church. He told me one time he's in worship in church, and God just said, hey, get all the money in your pocket, go back and hand it to the person 10 rows behind you or whatever. Just boom, hand it to him and walked off. Like, God told me to give that to you. Wait, what? And it's like, it was the exact amount of money this person had been praying to God about. How did you know? He didn't. People would be like, what did God tell you? How did you know I needed this amount of money? And my dad would be like, I didn't. God just said, give him that. And he just did. Like, it was just as simple. He would hear God say, I mean, how much we overthink. Did God really tell me that? Did God say to do that? Well, maybe that wasn't what, he heard God, he would just go do it. Yeah. And that's what the prophets did. The prophets, God would say something and they would just speak it, as crazy as it was. Who was it? Which one of the prophets was it? Was it Elisha, or what? It might have been one of the minor prophets. I can't remember right now. Who spent a year on the side of the street, right, making shapes out of dung and stuff like that, and cooking it, doing this whole show for people. Yeah, for people walking by. It was like a year of acting this stuff out. Now lay on the ground and do this for several days, and and they just did it. And that was what my dad did. My dad was just, God would say, go. Like God told him something about the church. He's like, man, God, is that you? And God, my wife and I were just married, and God told my dad, that is as true as your grandchild is coming.
Wow.
And we had not told anybody.
And he knew.
We had found out, but we had not told anybody. And then when we announced it, my wife and I announced that we were pregnant with our first child, with Josh, my dad told us that, I knew about a week and a half ago that God said, not that I'm going to tell you that your son is pregnant. No, it was God. He was saying, is what I think you told me this about the church. Is that what you said? And God says, yes, it's as true as this. So when you hear that happen, you'll know that this is true. Wow. As a confirmation.
That's awesome.
And so those kind of things happened all the time with him, because he heard God and he just did it.
Yeah.
And it seems like such a simple thing, but most of the time we miss it. And he didn't.
I think one of the biggest legends I hear about him is this thing about throwing your hat over the fence. He had this ministry called Mighty Men.
Yes.
Mighty Men's Ministry. He discipled guys.
He had 3 guys that started off with, I'm trying to think right now, Lauren McCann, Dominic Webby, and I'm so sorry. It's been years. It's been, 21, 22 years now.
It's all right. There's way more guys now.
Yeah, but it started with 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. His name's John, but I can't remember his last name right now.
McCormick?
No. Eichmann. Yeah.
Okay.
And I believe it started with them, and then it grew. He did Tuesday night prayer nights and stuff like that. In fact, I was talking with Lauren McCann. That somebody has a hard drive. They would record them on this little digital recorder.
Lauren
and stuff like that.
Still has all that.
Yeah, so it has all that. I put all those on YouTube. But those are the times when my dad spoke. But they actually recorded all, and somebody just said, "Hey, I found a hard drive that has all those on there. What can we do with it?" So I'm going to see if we can get. But like they would have Tuesday night prayer, and awesome. And the Mighty Men ministry came out of that. It grew from those 3 men.
Wow, that's crazy. Oh man. We're almost out of time.
Is that time? Right. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay, so let's wrap it up with this. Tell them like where you're headed with your ministry right now, where God has you.
Right now, I was a pastor when I was a junior high pastor, but before that I was a graphic artist and I liked video and stuff like that. So with the junior hires, I would do graphics and video, and Pastor Ron saw that, said, I want you to do that for the church. And so it's awesome. It transitioned. So for many, many years, for 10, 12 years, I worked at Valley Bible Fellowship and then ended up coming to New Life Church and working at New Life Church behind the scenes, making video, doing all the stuff, running everything. And in 2018, God spoke to me and says, you have a voice and it's time to be heard. Ooh. And so I started a podcast at that time. I ended up getting into the rotation at New Life Church on the speaking rotation and being able to do that. But I believe right now what God has called me to do, I during COVID, I'll say it. I was laid off from New Life because they were cutbacks and COVID, stuff like that. Got a job in the out in the world, got a job, working for a company doing video for them. And then last year, God called me to leave that job to start my own business. Wow. Leave that job, start my own business, doing video, doing what the skill that I have, video consulting, stuff like that for churches. But the purpose was, God says, I want you to be able to control your own schedule so that you can say yes to speaking wherever it is. Yeah. And that way you control you have your own business, you control your own schedule so that I could come on a Monday night at 5:30 to be on this podcast with you. Awesome. I can host my own podcast at 4:00 in the afternoon on Tuesdays, or I can go, I did a funeral on Thursday, just to be available. God said, have this business so you can control your time so that you can be available to speak. And I believe that God has given me a message to the church in general, the Church of America. I think that the Church of America in general is a little misguided with their, I think their patriotism is tied to their belief, their faith, just a little bit too much. And I have to constantly remind people that, Jesus wasn't a Republican, right? Like Jesus was not an American. Yeah. Like your Christianity
he
and
might have been brown, just so you know.
Yeah, your Christianity and your patriotism really shouldn't mix as much as it does. And your identity is in Christ. Your identity is not in your country. And so I feel that I feel that God has given me a message for the church in general, maybe speaking to pastors, going to conference meetings, just to get this word out. So God told me to start this business so that my time could be freed up so that I could speak where he calls me to speak.
Yeah. And with that being said, I want to thank 511 Media for putting this together.
Giving me a platform.
And who's in the back?
Layla is running this. Yeah.
Thank you, Layla, for running this for us. Thank you, Mike Harvey. And, it's an honor to have you on the show. We'll definitely have you back.
I appreciate it.
We've got some big interviews like Will Gutierrez. Collins Reimer will be coming. What's his name? Oh, gosh, I'm forgetting the other guy.
Oh, you can tell I'm bad with names too. Yeah, so,
but we've got a couple of pastors who are going to come in. I have one big announcement to make.
Ooh.
I will be the speaker on Sunday at M24's men's retreat this year. So September 7th and 8th, Will's doing Saturday night, and then I'm going to do the Sunday departure message. So it's a huge honor.
It is.
And I'm excited. So
nice.
I'm ready.
You're not nervous. You're excited.
I'm excited. But thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys have a blessed day. See you in 2 weeks.
Sounds good.